Hey there, fellow bookworms. Welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be taking a look at A Little Princess. It's a children's adaptation of the classic Frances Hodgson Burnett novel. And I think this is going to be really fun to kind of uncover what makes Sara Crewe's journey so captivating, from riches to rags and back again.
Yeah, it's a story that's really just enchanted generations. And I think this adaptation that we're looking at does a really wonderful job of making this story accessible to younger readers without losing any of that heart that makes Burnett's work so timeless.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we're going to be focusing on, the big themes: kindness and resilience,
Hmm.
and of course the power of imagination. And I think these themes are so beautifully interwoven throughout the story. They really offer valuable insights no matter what your age is.
Yeah, and they're so universal,
Mhm.
they really do tap into something that is very fundamental about, the human experience. That inner strength and the connections that we forge can really be our greatest assets, especially during difficult times.
Right, and I think,
Yeah.
with that in mind, let's get into the story itself. So it all begins with Sarah. She's this bright and imaginative 7-year-old,
Oh.
and she arrives at Miss Minchin's boarding school in London. And, she's traveled all the way from India with her father, Captain Crewe. And he clearly dotes on her and spares no expense for his little girl.
Yeah, you really get the sense that Sarah is not like your average student. Her arrival is very grand. She's got, you know, these beautiful clothes, expensive toys. She even speaks French. I mean, it's no wonder Miss Minchin, who is quite practical, is so taken with her. A wealthy and well-behaved student is a real prize for a school like this.
Right, and to top it all off,
Yeah.
Miss Minchin even says that Sarah looks like a princess. It's almost like foreshadowing.
Right.
Setting the stage for Sarah's, very privileged life at the school. She's treated like a star pupil. And she's even given, special lessons and the freedom to choose her own desk.
But it's interesting, though, because even with this very privileged position that she's in, Sarah doesn't act spoiled at all or entitled in any way. She genuinely wants to connect with her classmates. She befriends Ermengarde, who is not the brightest student, and even helps her with her lessons. And this really makes her later fall from grace so impactful, because you see her innate kindness from the very beginning.
Yeah, and that fall comes really hard and fast. When tragedy strikes Captain Crewe. So, those diamond mines that he had invested in, well, it turns out that they weren't as sure a thing as everyone thought that they were.
Yeah.
And on top of that, a supposed friend of his disappeared with all of his money.
Yeah.
And then Captain Crewe falls ill, and, well, things just go downhill very quickly from there.
Yeah, this is really where the story takes like a sharp turn. Sarah goes from being this pampered princess of the school to basically an orphaned servant girl, and she's totally at the mercy of Miss Minchin, who's now vindictive and just cruel. I mean, it's a real harsh reality check for Sarah, and it really makes you think about how quickly fortune can change for someone.
It really does.
Yeah.
And Miss Minchin's treatment of Sarah is truly heartbreaking. She's forced to live in this cold, damp attic room. She's given barely enough food and is made to do all the, the most menial tasks. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, Miss Minchin is constantly reminding Sarah of her lost status, really, just rubbing salt in the wound.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stark contrast to her previous life, for sure. But what is remarkable is how Sarah responds to this. Despite all the hardships, she doesn't let go of her kindness or her vibrant imagination. And this raises kind of an important question. Wouldn't it be incredibly difficult to maintain that kind of inner strength when you're facing that much constant belittlement? Do you think the story accurately portrays the kind of psychological toll such a drastic change would have on someone?
That's a great point. It makes you think about the kind of inner mechanisms that she might be using to cope. We see this especially in her relationship with Becky, who's a fellow servant girl.
Yeah.
And they form this really strong bond, supporting each other through all these challenges. And even when she's barely scraping by herself, Sarah still shares what little food she has with a hungry child on the street. There's, it's such a stark contrast to her past life of privilege, and yet her generosity remains. It makes you wonder how our upbringing might shape our capacity for empathy.
Oh, absolutely. And this act of generosity on her part really emphasizes that her true worth lies not in material possessions, but in her actions and how she treats others. Sarah really proves that even when you're stripped of everything, your inherent goodness can still shine through. And it's inspiring to see her hold on to that, even when faced with such adversity.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just through kindness that she perseveres. Sarah finds solace in her imagination. She creates these really elaborate stories and transforms her dreary attic room into this world of wonder. But it's more than just escapism, though. She's actively choosing to shape her own reality and refusing to be defined by her circumstances.
What's so fascinating about that is Her imagination almost foreshadows reality in a way. Like in her story, she imagines this Indian gentleman living next door. And she's completely unaware that her fantasy is closer to the truth than she can even imagine. So this is where we kind of get into the mystery next door, wouldn't you say?
It is. Enter Mr. Carrisford. He's this reclusive, sickly man. And he is searching for his late friend's daughter, Sara Crewe. And little does he know, she's living right next door in the attic of Miss Minchin's school. It's almost like a Dickensian coincidence, like something straight out of a Charles Dickens novel, full of these surprising twists of fate.
It really is. And Mr. Carrisford is accompanied by his very loyal Indian servant, Ram Das, and he ends up playing a crucial role in connecting Sarah with her father's friend. And there's even this adorable anecdote about Ram Dass's pet monkey. This mischievous little guy escapes and ends up on the roof and leads Ram Dass right to Sarah's attic room.
Wow, so this seemingly insignificant event really sets the stage for a truly life-altering encounter.
Yeah.
What were the chances that a mischievous monkey would lead to such a momentous reunion?
Right. It's quite remarkable, isn't it? That monkey becomes like a catalyst for change and sets in motion this chain of events that will transform Sarah's life forever. It's really a beautiful example of how these seemingly small moments can have really profound consequences.
It really is. And what a heartwarming consequence it is. So this chance encounter really paves the way for a touching reunion between Sarah and Mr. Carrisford. And he's starting to, recognize her. He's seeing these flashes of his dear friend and her spirit and generosity.
Yeah, it's a beautiful moment of recognition, kind of layered with both joy and a touch of sadness. He's finally found the daughter of his friend, but she's living in poverty under Miss Minchin's cruel thumb.
Right. And once Mr. Carrisford learns the truth about what's happening, about Sarah's situation, he's determined to make things right. He reveals his true identity as Captain Crew's close friend and benefactor. And, effectively restoring Sarah to the life she was meant to have.
Yeah.
It's just such a satisfying moment of redemption, seeing her, free from that life of hardship.
It is. It really is. But it goes beyond just the material comforts, too. Sarah finds an emotional connection with Mr. Carrisford, who really becomes this loving father figure that she so desperately needs. He provides not just a home, but that sense of belonging and security that she's been longing for.
Yeah, this reunion really beautifully highlights the importance of human connection, having someone who truly believes in you. Especially when you're facing hardship, it makes me think back to that question we posed earlier about how we would navigate these challenges if we were in Sarah's shoes.
I am curious, what are your thoughts? What parts of her story resonated most deeply with you?
Well, for me, I think it was Sarah's unwavering belief in her own worth. Even when everyone around her was telling her otherwise, she never let Miss Minchin's cruelty diminish her own inner light.
That's interesting. Well, that is certainly admirable. Wouldn't that be incredibly difficult to maintain when you're facing constant belittlement? Do you think that unyielding joy could also be interpreted as a coping mechanism? A way to avoid fully confronting the harsh reality of her situation?
That's a really thought-provoking point. Perhaps it's a combination of both. That innate sense of self coupled with the need to protect herself from despair. I think it really speaks to the complexity of human resilience. And, the story also really beautifully interweaves themes of wealth and poverty. Sarah's initial privilege is so starkly contrasted with her later poverty. It really shows that true worth isn't tied to material possessions at all.
Yeah, it's really powerful social commentary. It challenges our assumptions about wealth and status. And the story very clearly demonstrates that true character shines through, regardless of your circumstances. And we can't forget the importance of kindness, even when facing adversity. Sarah's compassion for Becky, for the street child, even for Ermengarde, shows that empathy really has no bounds.
Yeah, her actions are a testament to the power of human connection. Even while she's struggling herself, she consistently reaches out to others, recognizing their shared humanity.
And speaking of human connection, that reunion with Mr. Carrisford really does tug at the heartstrings, doesn't it? Seeing Sarah finally find a loving father figure after all she's been through is just incredibly heartwarming.
It is. It's a real testament to the enduring power of hope. Even when things seem really bleak, there's always the possibility of a brighter future, a chance for love and happiness to prevail. And let's not forget that unexpected twist. Remember those diamond mines that caused Sarah's downfall? Well, it turns out they weren't a failure after all. Mr. Carrisford reveals that they're now flourishing, making Sarah a wealthy heiress once again. Talk about a plot twist. It seems like those diamonds were just playing hide and seek, waiting for the perfect moment to sparkle again.
That's true. That unexpected turn. really emphasizes that true wealth doesn't just vanish, it can reemerge in the most surprising ways. It's kind of a reminder that even in the darkest of times, fortune can shift and hope can prevail.
And even with her newfound wealth, Sarah remains the same kind and compassionate girl that we've come to know. She uses her fortune to help those in need, proving that her character wasn't defined by her circumstances.
Right. And this transformation underscores the novel's message. True worth resides in one's character, not in material possessions. Sarah's journey really demonstrates that kindness and compassion can not only survive, but thrive amidst hardship, and that true wealth is measured in love, empathy, and resilience.
It's a powerful message for sure. And it's one that's especially relevant, I think, in today's world,
Mhm.
where we're often bombarded with this idea that success equals material wealth and social status. A Little Princess really serves as a reminder that true wealth lies in the qualities of our character, the strength of our spirit, and the depth of our empathy.
And ultimately, that's what makes Sarah's story so enduring and universally appealing. It's a story about the triumph of the human spirit, the power of imagination to transcend circumstance, and the enduring belief in the goodness within ourselves and others.
Yeah, it really is. It's a story that really stays with you. It reminds us that even in a world that can often feel dark and cynical, there's always space for kindness and hope and redemption. And Sarah's journey, I think, shines a light for all of us, inspiring us to strive for those same qualities in our own lives.
Yeah, and it's not just Sarah who undergoes a transformation in the story. Miss Minchin, who's consumed by greed and envy, ultimately faces the consequences of her actions. Her mistreatment of Sarah leads to her own downfall. And this highlights, I think, a key theme that kind of runs throughout the novel.
It's almost like a classic case of karma, wouldn't you say? Her story really serves as a cautionary tale, I think, reminding us that our choices have consequences and that true fulfillment doesn't come from taking advantage of others.
It does. It really does. The story really implies that, true happiness comes from acting with integrity, kindness, and compassion, not from exploiting others for personal gain. Miss Minchin's downfall is just as satisfying as Sarah's redemption.
Yeah. It really reinforces the idea that we reap what we sow. And it's especially poignant when you consider that. Sarah, even after experiencing such cruelty at the hands of Miss Minchin, never loses her empathy. It makes you wonder, why do you think Miss Minchin treats Sarah so terribly? Is it purely greed, or is there like a deeper resentment at play?
That's a good question. I think it prompts us to really examine the complexities of human nature. Perhaps Miss Minchin sees in Sarah, those qualities that she herself lacks, the kindness, generosity, and genuine joy. And maybe that contrast fuels her resentment.
That's a good point. It's a reminder that sometimes the harshest treatment can come from a place of deep insecurity. And in a way, Sarah's unwavering spirit is a threat to Miss Minchin's entire worldview.
Yeah, it's like Sarah embodies everything that Miss Minchin has suppressed within herself. And that clash really does make for a compelling narrative. It reminds us that our actions always have repercussions, and that ultimately choosing kindness and compassion leads to a more fulfilling life.
So we've talked about the themes, the characters, the twists and turns of the plot. But before we wrap up today, I want to circle back to that question we posed earlier about, what would your story be if you were in Sarah's shoes?
Yeah, how would you navigate those same challenges, the triumphs, the unexpected turns of fate? It's a question that I think encourages a lot of self-reflection.
It's almost like a personal litmus test, isn't it? It forces us to confront our own values and consider how we would respond in the face of adversity. Would we crumble under the weight of hardship? Or would we find a way to maintain our integrity and emerge stronger on the other side?
And that's the beauty of a story like A Little Princess. It doesn't just entertain us, it really invites us to engage in some meaningful self-discovery. Sarah's journey becomes like a blueprint almost, reminding us that we have the power to choose kindness, to cultivate resilience, and to never relinquish hope, even in the darkest of times.
Yeah, it's a story that really does stay with you and prompts you to be more compassionate, more resilient, and to never lose sight of the magic and wonder that exists within each of us. As we conclude our deep dive into A Little Princess, I want to encourage you all to carry Sarah's story in your heart.
Yeah, let it serve as a reminder to nurture those inner strengths, the ones that will guide you through the inevitable challenges and empower you to create your own unique and meaningful story. And remember, even when life throws its toughest tests your way, hope and kindness can and do prevail.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into A Little Princess. We hope you've enjoyed exploring Sarah's world with us and that her story will continue to resonate with you long after this episode ends. Until next time, fellow bookworms, keep those pages turning and those imaginations soaring.